So growing up, Warhammer was a huge part of my life. I spent countless hours painting miniatures and just crafting different strategies alongside my dad. We were just fully immersed in its universe. I started with Necromunda, I progressed eventually to base Warhammer, and then finally I did settle, like many I think, on 40k. But now if you fast forward to today, I may not play these tabletop variations anymore, but Warhammer has made a massive splash in the world of video games, and I've been along for that ride. Now I will say a few games have sadly been delisted, some good, some bad. So for an example, Age of Sigmar Champions, fantastic game. Space Wolf, not so much. But today, let's focus on the fantastic options still available on the Switch, as I played all 8 remaining titles. So think from strategic skirmishes to epic quests, this one should have you covered, and I'm going to be ranking them for my particular favourites. My name's Alex, and if you do enjoy this video, do me a favour, subscribe, it helps out the channel a huge amount. Alright, so I think my first pick's going to upset some people, but we're stepping into the dark fantastical world of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormground. Now if you're not already familiar, Age of Sigmar is essentially a reimagining of the original Warhammer. That was a change that stirred some controversy amongst fans, I'll put that out there, but I do think from a gaming perspective, that setting here is definitely a winner. So here, you're going to find yourself battling across realms filled with legends, heroes, those of course hellish creatures, and generally just intense conflicts. However, what's the gameplay like? It's a turn-based strategy game. That's a good thing. Warhammer always crushes in that arena. But it's got an added twist here of roguelike mechanics, and that is actually what places it at the bottom of my list today. These elements, for me, it just turns the game into an exercise in frustration. So, you know what, actually, let's break down a few positives here first. You can choose from 3 factions, offering solid variety. There's also a ton of content to dive into here. Also, the core mechanics are definitely solid. I'd even go as far as calling them enjoyable. And the game, well, I want to say it runs good, but it runs okay on the Switch. Definitely not great, but it does work. However, the pacing here is just incredibly slow. Waiting for turns can feel like an absolute bloody eternity, and the roguelike mechanics make it so much worse because battles are lengthy, so if you lose, that means you're resetting a huge amount of progress, and yeah, I just found it completely disheartening. Now, if the roguelike elements here were dropped, the game would be ranking much higher today. Actually, I think it'd be almost like top 3 here. But as it stands, I can only recommend it to fans who are willing to test their patience. For everyone else, I'm gonna say it's likely to be an experience you would give up on. Next up then, we have a Warhammer 40,000 Dakka Squadron Flyboys Edition, and I have no doubt for many this would be at the bottom of the list. And it actually originally debuted on mobile platforms, which no doubt put people off, but it also lends some insight into its, I guess, gameplay mechanics. It's a simplistic arcade flight sim, but it is one that I personally had some fun with. Now sadly, with this game, the launch was simply put less than stellar. At first, we were actually promised a patch to improve the game's low resolution, but this update took so long to arrive, or so much longer at least, than anyone anticipated. And during this period, of course, players who did dive in had to endure unimpressive visuals and an extremely low resolution. Unfortunately, that patch did drop, offering some much needed improvements. The game looks much better now, performs more smoothly, but there's still admittedly room for improvement. The performance wobbles very much present, I'd say only occasionally though, and I also think in general it's fair to say that Dakka Squadron, it isn't the deepest game around, again, mobile roots. The missions are straightforward, often calling for you to simply blast everything in sight, and I do wish, it had a dash more variety. That said though, it is fun to pick up here and there for 10-15 minute sessions. Despite its flaws as well, I do think there is a silver lining. Unlike Age of Sigmar Stormground, it offers a level of fun that makes it worth revisiting. Quick sessions are kind of its forte, as I said, ideal for those moments where you just want to let loose and obliterate some enemies, and it's by no means a masterpiece by any stretch, but compared to the frustration of Stormground for me, I do think it's a fun spin on Warhammer action. Tactical games for this world make sense, but I'm not sure I would have had Orc arcade flight action on my bingo cards. Next up then, we have Warhammer 40,000 Shooter's Blood and Teeth. Now this game also throws you headfirst into the chaos of the orcs, delivering a, I guess, old school run and gun experience. And if you love your orcish humour or their distinct style, there's a good chance you're going to find something you like with this one. Now regarding the story accompanying the action, you're jumping into the boots of an orc as he embarks on a quest for vengeance against his warlord, and perhaps you'll even take that role, become the new war boss. Transparently, look, I'm going to put it out there now, I'm actually listing this one a little higher today than I may have, but the reason is that it seems many enjoyed this a whole lot more than I did, so I don't, want to put you off, I guess, entirely. Basically though, my issues, look, with the game generally I thought the visual design had its moments, I liked the cartoon look, but there were one too many bland locations, and additionally, the frame rate really struggled with this game. I do think as well, generally, it just lacks creativity. Too often it's going to trap you in a location and just throw waves of the same enemy in your direction. But look, this all said, as I noted, many kind of enjoyed its blend of action, Warhammer and humour, and I definitely understand the appeal of the orc, so no doubt that won many over. With this one, I'd say take a look for yourself and go from there. There is, however, a positive note here, and that is, as we move on with this list now, we're moving to the good stuff, and I don't think you can go wrong with any of the remaining titles. So yes, this is a DLC, so it will require you purchase the base game first, and some may even question its inclusion, I get it, but like, I personally really enjoy it, and granted, there's not a huge amount to say on it. Your job is to cleanse the Imperium's instruments. That, however, includes a decent little roster: the Ultramarines Land Raider, the Dark Angels, Deathwing Redemptor, Dreadnought, the Dawn Tank, the House Hawkshroud Imperial Knight, and finally the Blood Angels Thunderhawk. Look, if you want to clean in the world of Warhammer, well, first of all, you don't have many choices, but this could potentially be the game for you, because the satisfaction it brings can't be overstated. It's just this surprisingly zen experience to see Warhammer's iconic war machines slowly shed their layers of grime under your meticulous care. And again, like, sure, it's not action-packed, but it gives you a really unique way to interact with this universe. So yeah, look, if you're looking for something a bit different, this might just be what you need. Warhammer Quest II next invites you into the heart of the Warhammer fantasy universe, bringing to life the classic tabletop experience, however, of course, in a digital format. Unlike its predecessor, however, Quest II doesn't quite hit the same, I guess, high notes. Yes, it still offers the engaging turn-based strategy and a plethora of characters and settings, but if I'm being honest, it feels just, I guess, somewhat less inspired compared to that original. This said though, like, the game's core mechanics remain solid, maintaining that classic mix of strategy that fans of the tabletop game will appreciate. Expect here though to move your heroes through dark dungeons, face off against a variety of foes, and collect treasures to upgrade your team. That said though, I don't know, the design here just feels a tad generic. The original Warhammer Quest, it had a spark of creativity and charm, and this sequel feels a little hurried, it lacks that same sense of care. Also, some of the systems, the new ones, just don't seem to operate as well, and the enemies, they felt much easier due to AI that just wasn't quite, I guess, as, I don't know, punishing. Overall though, look, it's essentially more of the same, but not executed to the same quality. Still though, there is fun to be found here if you're craving a Warhammer experience on your Switch. If you love the first game as well, you'll likely appreciate what Warhammer Quest II tries to offer. However, just don't expect it to surpass that original. On that note then, Warhammer Quest, the original game, is well worth your time. This turn-based strategy dungeon crawler just got so much right in my opinion. The battles feel challenging, the AI surprises you, and the environments and the locations feel respectful of that source material. I lost a huge amount of hours to this game, and it's funny when I do go back, this is always the entry I head to. Like I said, it just got so much right. When they did follow up with that sequel, they tweaked it to give the impression of more effort, but all they managed was to, in my opinion, hurt that core experience. Like, again, I don't want to be too hard on the follow-up, it's still worth the time, but this is the best entry so far, and it runs and looks great on the Switch, so yeah, it definitely comes highly recommended. When I look back on my history with Warhammer, strategy games, let's face it, they just make sense for this world. but what I've always wanted was a first-person shooter, and Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun capitalized on just that. So think old school Doom-esque, but with modern sensibilities, such as an incredible chainsaw attack that sends you flying from foe to foe. On top of this though, there really are so many positives. Visually, I love the retro look, the firepower feels fantastic, you know, as it should. Every shot here just packs a punch. And then while the storyline isn't rocket science, basically a lone space marine against enemy forces on what is supposed to be an abandoned planet, I think generally it's fair to say it's decent for what the game demands. Now there were admittedly some problems at launch. You had some audio quirks, these were fixed up, but I will say when you look at the general game itself, it does have a couple of issues. I would say level layout, I think they are too big for their own good. You may find you get lost frequently because the game gives you little direction. And also I do think it relies a little too much on locking you in an arena to face wave of foes. This all said, however, I consider them minor setbacks because Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun is just great fun. Plus the soundtrack here, an absolute banger. This one is a must play if you like first person shooters generally, and then the Warhammer theming, honestly, I'd consider that just a massive bonus. So if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. We've made it to that #1 spot, and that game is Warhammer 40,000 Mechanicus. It is just incredible, and when it came to putting this list together, I didn't even have to think about what was in my #1 spot. This is a game I go back to again and again, and with good reason. I think it just captures 40k universe by far the best. It's the way they portray the factions here. I do think occasionally with Warhammer games, they can be a little hit and miss on that front, but this one just exudes passion for the universe, and specifically the Adeptus Mechanicus. It's just gritty in all of the right ways as you are setting out to war. Regarding gameplay then, it is a turn-based tactical game that features over 50 missions, and it also includes bonus objectives thanks to DLC that was released prior to the Switch build, so they did include it here at launch. I think what really elevates this one, however, is just the general mission setup. So basically, you control individual squad members rather than units on the Switch. That works so well, especially in handhelds. And then between missions, you'll get to add new individuals and work on those in the team already. I think on top of this as well, the story here, more than most, is kind of in depth. You'll be exploring locations prior to battle, and there are these text-based moments where you must choose a decision. So for example, you see a body on the floor, do you investigate, yes or no? It adds this world building that we rarely see, and you'll actually be paying for those decisions. It's just a fantastic game that I reviewed back at launch, and yes, there was a hard crash bug that arrived with a day one patch, unfortunately. So you may still see that mentioned in some videos, but that was quickly fixed. And yeah, buy this game if you enjoy the genre, because it's not only, in my opinion, the best Warhammer game on the Switch, but it's also one of the best strategy experiences too. And that is my ranking of all the Warhammer games currently available on the Switch. Let me know your favourites in the comments down below, maybe your top, let's say 3, and also let me know what you agree or disagree with when it comes to my personal breakdown. And if you did enjoy this video, once again, subscribe, it helps us out a huge amount, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.